we are going to look at Google Sites and how to set up pathways using Google Sites. Google Sites is wonderful. I got really ambitious at the beginning of this year. Over the summer, actually, I was trying to set all of my pathways up using Google Sites. I wound up not rolling that out. I wanted to take a little bit longer to kind of develop that, but I had my whole curriculum housed in Google Sites. So I was really excited, but then realized that, maybe better hold off on doing that to develop it a little bit further. There's so much you can do with Google Sites. I decided to roll out little pieces of it at a time rather than trying to roll it all out at one time. So I teach middle school. So, middle schoolers are pretty, at this point between 6th and 8th grade, pretty tech savvy. So they have a pretty decent time following along in Google Sites. Lots of different ways to set it up. I'll show you kind of really quickly if it will let me, if it's going to be nice. Go to Google Sites. I'll show you kind of what my original idea was, but I have not actually done it yet. Like I said, this is not ready for rollout. But one way to set it up is by unit. If you're going to do like everything, like your whole curriculum in it. So whenever the kids would have logged in, they would have seen their different topics and the different units all right here. And when they clicked on it, it would have taken them to that specific page so that they could see all of their work for that unit there. So that was the original idea. I had to scale it way back and kind of do pieces of it. So this hasn't actually been launched yet. Hopefully I'll have this ready for next year, especially if we start out, which it's looking like we probably are, in a way that has a heavy online presence, with staggered children in our buildings or whatever it is that we start next year with. I really, really am going to try to have my Google Sites ready to roll. So we might be learning together a little bit, depending on what you guys decide to do with Google Sites. But just to kind of show you right now, if you were with me last week, so that made me close out all of Google Sites. So you can go to sites.google.com. But what you'll see whenever that happens is the old sites. Why it does not just take you straight to the new Google Sites, I don't know. But you can click on new Google Sites here, and that'll take you to what you'd actually be using to create a Google site. So you can see I have several that I'm either a part of or that I've made. Different things all throughout here. So if I wanted to create a new Google site, I would click this create new site right here, which is what we'll do in just a minute. I'm going to show you kind of what I have as far as a unit set up for them. So what I did just prior to this was I pulled some resources. These pathways are what we did last week. So I'm not going to use those. And this is what we were doing this morning. Actually, I'm going to leave those in place for right this second. But I pulled 3 different note pages to go along with portraits. I'm learning how to draw portraits. So one of them is how to draw a face, which is basically just the proportions of the face, and then how to draw hair and eyes. Since that tends to be 2 of the popular hot topics for kids that they want to learn how to do. So this girl that does rapid fire art, her name is Darlene, and she has a website that is phenomenal. And she does note page tutorials. So a lot of kids, surprisingly, really like going along with the notes. I think it's because they don't feel so rushed. It's really more of like an at their pace kind of thing. So she does these note page tutorials, but she also pairs those, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, with a video. So what I did was I pulled from her YouTube channel the links to the videos that kind of pair with. So this is the video that pairs with that note page so that the language between the 2 are very similar. And what kids would do for this unit is they would choose for each part. So if they were doing face proportions, they could choose, do I want to learn how to do face proportions with the video, or do I want to learn how to do face proportions with the notes? So the pathway that I'm going to build right now is just going to have, or the unit that I'm going to build is only going to have 2 pathways, with one being videos and one being notes. So they get to choose how they get that material delivered to them, which is what I'm going to house in the Google site when we create that. So just keep that in mind, that I went on ahead and pulled some of those resources to build this pathway with, to build this unit. Hey, Joel. So I have these note pages and I have the videos pulled. And what I'll do for the videos too is I'll put those into Visio, which is what I talked about a couple weeks ago, where it cuts out the ads. You can add those stops along the way. And what you can actually do with Google Sites is embed those videos from Visio. So then they don't even get taken to like a new tab. It just is all right there in your Google site. And you can embed the PDFs and everything all right there, which is super, super helpful. So like I said, all I've done right now is gone to sites.google.com, where I can see all of my sites. But if I wanted to start in Google Drive and create a Google site from in here, I could click on New, More, and create a Google site from there. You can also just kind of come down here, right click, and hit More and the Google Sites. So this is going to create me a brand new Google site. It's going to be blank. It'll have a little bit of stuff up at the top. But this is what you'll see when you create a new Google site from scratch. This is it. So Google Sites are very basic as far as building them. They're pretty easy to understand how to build. We use it a lot with our kids. Our kids build a lot of Google Sites. It takes a little bit of learning and a little bit of a learning curve to figure out how it all works together. But really, Google Sites is very user-friendly, even more so than the old Google Sites. They've updated it to what you see now. So they're super, super easy to use. I think I had, a little bit of a learning curve, learning all the ins and outs of it, but it's pretty cool. I like it a whole lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename my Google site, and I'm going to put portrait unit up at the top so that the kids would know that this is their portrait unit. This is the Google site for that. So this is a little different than what I showed you a few minutes ago. This is like one unit just standalone in a Google site rather than having all of my units in a Google site. Like I said, in game, that is what I'd like to do, but have not done that yet. So I'm just going to put this one unit in this Google site here. And since this is going to be my home page, I'm just going to put portraits. And typically what I would do is add in a text box here to let them know what their driving question is. So I would put driving question. This is where, on the home screen, is just kind of where I would put basic information about the unit. So on my typical Google Docs that I use for their pathways, I have some information up at the top, and that's usually the type of information that I include here, what standards I'm covering, what their driving question is, what their suggested pace is, and then I'll add the links to the different places. So just kind of up here, it's kind of that same basic overview idea. So I would just put in this information at the top up here. So I have my driving question. I would put in my standards that I'm covering. I could put a suggested pace there. And so from there, I would start linking in the different pieces of the unit. So with this unit that I'm setting up, there's 3 major components to it. So in this portraits unit, they're going to learn the face proportions, hair, and eyes, just kind of on a basic level. So what I would do is in my portrait unit over here on my Google site, I'm going to add in kind of their links to the different parts. So what I could do is under my suggested pace, I'm going to add one more text box. But instead of it being what it's called normal text, I would actually make it a title or a heading. So if I put in a title that says, let's say, components of this unit, and I would put in a little description, like make sure you complete each component kind of thing. So whenever I do that, I can go in and I can add kind of a plethora of things from over here. Sometimes what I do is use collapsible text if I want to add in just like a little overview. So let's say I wanted to add in a collapsible text. So I would put in first face proportions. And so let's say this is step 1 for them. So that way they kind of know. I usually number the different tasks or different steps just so they have a clear understanding. Even sometimes though that is a struggle. You know, just adding those numbers in there sometimes for them is super helpful. So this would be, let's say, click here to go to learn how to proportion the face correctly. So what they would actually see is this little drop down button, and they could click on it just to kind of see a little information about it. Oh my gosh, and now it's not going away. There we go. Also, what I can do from here is link to a new page, which is definitely what I would do. So let's just like kind of work on step 1 for now. So I've got my step 1. They know that's going to be face proportions, and I'm going to want that link to take them to where they actually do the work for face proportions. So over here where it says pages, this is my home page that I'm on now, but there's no other pages yet. So I'm actually going to click to add a new page, and this one's going to be step 1, face proportions. I'm going to click done. And so now I added a new page into my site. So from the home screen, I'm going to want that link to send them to step 1. So I'm going to highlight the text here and click on the link button, and I want it to link them to step 1. So I'm going to apply that. And now when they click on that, it's going to take them to where they do the work for the face proportion part of this unit. So what I'm going to do from here is actually put in there 2 different options. So like I was saying before, they're going to have the option to either use a video or to do a PDF note page that they can follow along with. And then they would, you know, do that work, submit photos of their work to Google Classroom, which I can also link into this as well, which is super, super, super helpful. I'm going to put in their video option and their note option here. So what I'm going to do for their video option is put that into Vizia because that's what, you know, will allow for those stops, allow for them to not have the ads and not actually be taken to YouTube because YouTube is hit or miss. So I'm going to come back and open up this document where I have the different links that I've already pulled to use for this unit. And then I'm going to go to Vizia.co. And it'll have you log in. You can log in using Gmail. So I'll log in using my school account. And then I'm going to click on New Video. So this first part was the face proportions. So over here from my links, I'm going to get the How to Draw a Face link. And I'm going to copy that. And then in Vizia, I'm going to paste that link right there and hit continue. Okay. There you go. We'll take this to person. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to edit the name to say How to Draw Faces. And click Update. And then I can add stops along the way if I want them to stop and answer a question, or if I want them to do something specific. If this thing will load. So all of that, if you look back in the Vizia video that I did, you can kind of see how to do all that. But right here, this is what I'm interested in as far as my Google Sites in particular, is actually embedding that video into Google Sites so it doesn't take them to a new screen or to a new tab. So I'm going to click there. It says it copied to clipboard. So literally just clicking on it will copy it. And I'm going to go back to, not that, let me close out some of these tabs. I'm going to come back to my step 1 face proportions page of my Google site, and there's an embed button right here. So I'm going to click that, and you can do it by URL, but from Visio, I usually do it by embedding the actual code. And so I'm going to paste that code right there and click next. And then it kind of shows me what they will see. I can edit the code. There's ways to make it bigger and smaller. So like if I wanted it to be, 800, whatever the measuring unit for that is, wide, and 500 tall or whatever, I could do that there. I don't know if that's going to make it super wacky or not. Actually, let me not do that. But you can change the different sizes of it there if you want it to appear larger or smaller. But Google Sites does a good job about whenever they actually log on, making sure that it fits their screen, or if they're logging in from a cell phone or whatever, making sure that it all they can see the whole thing. So I'm going to click next and then click insert. So it kind of cut off a little bit of it here. You can preview it to see if it still does that whenever you actually see it on here, which it did not. So I could click play and have it go from there. But also, just to make sure, I could resize this by dragging those little blue boxes or the blue circles kind of all the way out, just to make sure it doesn't cut any of that off for them, making sure that whole window is visible to them. I can make it a little smaller this way and drag it to the middle if I decide I want to do that. Oops, stop being crazy. So they can see their video there. So what I could do is just kind of put a text box here that says, and I could drag this text box back to the top of this, that says option 1 is to watch the video. And then beneath the video, I can put another one that says option 2, work along with the notes. So they know they have 2 different options. You can always make that a little more clear for them depending on what they want to do. But if I want to import these notes now, I can link them in here, or what I do is, thank you, is I use the import from Google Drive. So I'm going to find that unit. Oops, wrong way. Go back. So how to draw lessons. And I'm going to find my face proportion notes and click on those to insert those. And I'm going to make this a little bit larger if it will let me, so that it'll take up more of that screen for them. It'll kind of resize along with how you drag it. So then they'll be able to scroll through and see that. And if you want to see again like what they see whenever they would log into this, you can click that preview button up here at the top, and then you can see what they would see. So option 1 would be for them to watch that video, and then option 2 would be to work along with the notes, so they can scroll through and see all the notes in here and work along with that. So if I'm happy with the way that looks, I'm going to close that out from the preview. And then the last piece that I would put in here is make sure you submit the photos of your work to Google Classroom. And so one thing you can do to make that easier for them to understand where to submit is actually go to your Google Classroom. I'm just going to pull a random assignment. Let's say this was part of Unit 1. So if I wanted it to take them directly to this assignment to submit, I can copy the link by clicking those 3 little buttons right here and click copy link. And so it copied the link straight to that assignment. And then I can highlight part of this, click that link button again, and paste that link in there and apply that. So then whenever they click on that link, it will take them directly to that assignment. So that would be where they would submit their photos of what they did to go along with that lesson there. So just kind of an ease of use for the kids. They can click right there and know exactly where to submit it. There's no question. So those are just kind of the basics of how to set up that page. So whenever I go back to my home page, they'll be able to, you know, click this and go straight to their face proportions. And then I would set up another little collapsible text and do step 2 would be eyes maybe. Click here to learn how to draw realistic eyes. So I would go back and make sure I add a page for eyes. Done. All right. So now I put these out of order because it added the most recent one right here. So what I can do is just drag that down below step 1. So that way it goes in order. Sometimes it does weird things like that, but usually with Google anything, you can drag and drop things. So what I'm going to do is go back to my home page. And with this one, I'm going to link my step 2. And then I would do the same thing, you know, for step 3. Step 3 would be hair. Click done, and it put it up there again. So I'm just going to drag and drop it down. And then I'm going to go back to my home page and insert one more of those collapsible texts. So step 3 could be hair, and then I would link that to the step 3 there. Oh my gosh, why did it do that? So that would link those to those other 2 pages, and I would set those pages up pretty much the same way. You know, I would probably put something at the top that says there are 2 options to complete this component or this step. You can either watch the video or read through the notes and then submit. I would kind of give them an overview of what they should do at the top of the page, just so they knew. So sometimes what I do too is with a unit, whenever I get some really good portraits drawn or like kids are submitting some really good work, is whenever they first log in, just to kind of keep some excitement up about it, you can insert an image carousel. So what that will do is allow you to put in some pictures. So I would save some pictures to my desktop. Right now I only have my self-portrait on my desktop. And I can drag and drop. Nope, it's not gonna let me. I have to click upload first. All my Bitmojis. So let's pretend that these are what I wanted. So it says I have to select at least 2. So I pick 2 of those and click open. And it will load them slowly but surely. My internet's being really weird. So insert those there. Oh my gosh, why did it not put those up at the top? Okay. So if I wanted kids to kind of see different images pop up here, I'm going to drag these to the middle. And then when they log in, what they will see is they can kind of click through the different submissions that have happened so far. So sometimes they really like that. They like to go in and see what other people are doing. You know, I always get permission of the kids before I would post their artwork anywhere, but they can go in and kind of see what other people have been submitting to, just as examples. So that image carousel is pretty cool. Buttons will just take you to different places. It's just kind of like an already hyperlinked thing. What I did for one of my Google Classrooms was when I set up a Google site, I put in the calendar for that classroom. So whenever you click on this calendar, sorry y'all, all my stuff is popping up now. That makes sense. So I could insert, let's say this is my 7th grade class. I could insert their Google Calendar, which put it in a weird spot. And then they can kind of see upcoming assignments. If I want them to see like a monthly view, they can do that. But it will show them kind of in comparison with their Google Classroom, what assignments are coming up, or for that unit, what they've got going on. But you can insert a Google form as well. Slides, sheets, docs, all kinds of stuff. So just kind of as examples of those without getting into all the nitty gritty of that. hate that it doesn't already send you to the new Google Sites. I have no idea why it does that. So for their unit that they're doing right now for their enhancements, they are actually doing components for each of the enhancements. So this is kind of an example of one that's semi under progress, or semi still being built / already built in some places. This is another example of the drop down. So for their art requirements for this particular project, like I just wanted them to see a quick little overview of like, okay, what are we doing for art? So I use that little drop down there. And then to make it a little easier for them to understand, I just click here to go to the art requirements page. So when they click there, it takes them over to my piece of this, which at the top I put their 4 big components. And since they were already using Google Slides, I know you guys have probably seen this at this point, but since they were already using Google Slides as their pathways, what I did was I just put in the Google Slides here, and whenever they view it, they can just click through the different slides and see the components of their art piece for this particular unit. But the PE teacher is actually my husband, so I've been working with him on his. So this is his Google site for what they're doing for the PE requirements. So there are different parts up here at the top. And then he actually put in like his different steps into Google Classroom, kind of like what I was doing before. So this is their step 1 where they go through and they click on all of these links to kind of learn a little bit more about each of these mental disorders. And then he actually put in his Google form. So this is the quote unquote assessment piece. See what they see. So they would go through, his directions are right here, click on these, read a little bit more about them, and then they would fill out their Google form, which is directly, loaded right here in the Google site, which is super helpful for kids especially. Then they get into another part where they fill out a Google form, and then they're going to be doing a mental health log, which is not quite created for them yet. So all those Google forms are uploaded directly into Google Sites. So I really, really like Google Sites because you can embed so many things and everything is housed right in one spot for them. And then maybe just the turn-in pieces in Google Classroom rather than all the instructions and everything. So, and you can, like we're doing with this one, work cross-curricularly. Each subject can have their own page. I did some stuff before with our social studies teachers about World War II, where they were creating art. They did a little bit of history research on World War II and then went and did an artwork. So they had like a history section of the site and then their art section. So they knew that like all that project was housed in one spot. So lots of different ways to use it. You can use it cross-curricularly, where you have people who are able to edit the site, other teachers. So it kind of breaks down that information for them, but also, kind of puts it all in one spot, which is super nice. And then being able to just put directly in images, embed videos, and add things from your Google Drive, all super helpful. And then having just a whole list of things down here that you can put in as well. So lots of different ways to use it. Does anybody have any questions about it? I know that was a whole lot of information, again, thrown at you all at one time. It's kind of hard for me to gauge understanding online like this. Thank you, honey.
So Amber, when you share your Google Sites in your Google Classroom, do you put that in the classwork stream or in the classwork tab or in the stream?
Sometimes I'll post it both places. My Google Classroom is so broken down by unit that where I have these pathways is probably where I would put the Google site. But I would also, like if I were launching it, put it over here just so they could see it there as well.
I had a question. So from what I understand, Google Sites, you can do a lot more with versus Google Slides.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You know, with Google Slides, I can't upload like those PDFs straight in there. There's ways to do it, but it's a very like a roundabout way. There's no like direct way to do it, which is why I really, really like Google Sites, because you can just literally anything from your Google Drive, you can just upload it straight in there and it pops up for the kids. So they don't have to click to find things. It's all just right there.
So if like if we did this next year with our students in a classroom and gave them different pathways, because I really like this, this would work with a classroom, right? As long as you had Chromebooks and they could work individually on their own.
Yeah, for sure. You know, especially if this is obviously going to be the easiest if they each have their own device. But what I did with the classroom where I didn't have one-to-one devices, I would set up different stations, and kids might, like, one station be watching the videos or one station be going through the notes, while one station was teacher guided. It just kind of depends, so many different ways to set things up, and just kind of finding what works for you. You can have them doing different stations, whatever works for you. So like I was showing you before, this thing really gets on my nerves. Okay. With these units that I was trying to set up for this year, which I'll probably roll out, like I said, next year, I did not completely reinvent the wheel with doing it this way. I just used what I already had and housed it in Google Sites. So I had all these different areas. I probably would go back and make those little drop down things again, because right now they just see the whole thing. But just for less words in one area, I would probably go back and make those the drop down information. They could see their classroom calendar here, so they could see all their due dates in one calendar right there. I use a scorecard for their grades, so this just has their different standards and where I would rank them 1, 2, 3, or 4. They wouldn't actually see their individual grade pop up here. That was just kind of for their knowledge of what they were going to be graded on. So the homepage was just very simple. There was an introduction. It just kind of kicked them off in class with a syllabus, and then they got into their actual units. So their unit 1 is always elements and principles, just kind of going over that vocabulary, making sure that they can use a language of art. Then they had their driving question, and then I used the actual pathways that I had already created. So like I said, I did not reinvent the wheel. Whenever they logged in, they would see that Google Doc of their pathways, and it has the links in there, so they could click and go to the links to the different places. So still some things to improve there for me. And then they would see their rubric for that unit as well. So, and then they would turn everything in Google Classroom. But with their videos and stuff for this, I would go back probably and break down now their actual Google Doc. I wouldn't put this in there. I would go in and create like sub pages and stuff with the actual videos linked in there. So anyway, that's just kind of another way to use it. Like I said, I was going to have my whole curriculum housed here, all 6 units. So a couple different ways to do it. You know, you can set up one Google site per unit, which is what, you know, a lot of my teammates do, or house it all together if you have it all ready to go, which I just kind of recycled stuff from the previous year and put it all in here with the idea that I was going to go back and update and roll out different parts at different times. But I felt like that was too much of the elephant for one year. So hopefully for this upcoming year, bring it here, I'll open it. Come here. So does anybody have any other questions about Google Sites right now? I know the one that we built was kind of just a basic one, but seriously, just getting in there and playing with it and trying different things and adding different things. You know, that's how I learned, watching some YouTube videos and getting in and just trying it on my own. So if you guys get into it and have any questions, just let me know. I'm, you know, here to meet with you whenever you need it, or if you just want email questions, whatever you guys need.